Hi everyone, so we're going to start a new lesson, and this lesson is all about exponents and exponential equations and all that good stuff. So the first lesson is kind of a review of integer exponents. You should already know how to work with integer exponents from years previous, but we're going to do kind of a quick review for it. So you also have a sheet with all of these rules, but I wanted to go over them really fast in this video. So with exponents, there's a couple of things we can do with them to simplify them. And one of them is called the product rule. So the product rule is if I have a to the power of x times a to the power of y, I just add those two exponents. So if I'm multiplying something, I'm adding exponents. Quotient rule, it's kind of the similar but opposite. So if I do a to the power of x divided by a to the power of y, it's the same thing as subtracting those exponents, a to the power of x minus y. Then we have the power rule. So if you have something inside of a set of parentheses that's to the power of something, you're going to multiply that exponent. So it's a to the power of x to the power of y is equal to a to the power of x times y. And then we have the zero exponent. So if I have anything to the zero power, it is equal to 1, or it just cancels. The way that I like to think about it is it cancels out. And then the negative is that if I have anything to the power of a negative exponent, I don't like negative exponents. Math doesn't like negative exponents. So what we have to do is get rid of the negative exponent by shoving it to the opposite side of the fraction. So if it starts on the top of the fraction, it goes to the bottom. And when it goes to the bottom, it changes to positive. And if it starts on the bottom as a negative, then we shove it to the top and it makes it positive. So like I said, you already have a sheet with all of these rules on it to kind of backtrack to when you're looking at the self-check. Let's start going through the first example. So the first example is 4x cubed y to the fourth times 2x to the negative 2y. So this is a simple product rule. The way that I like to do it is when you have numbers in front or coefficients in the front, we're going to actually multiply those things. Those aren't exponents, so they actually do get multiplied 4 times 2. But then for all of the exponents, we're going to add those exponents as long as they're from the same variable. So like we're going to add the exponents on the x's, we're going to add the exponents on the y's. So for my x's, I'm going to have x to the power of 3 plus a negative 2 because we have that 3 right there and then the negative 2 right there. Those are my exponents for the x's. And then we'd have y to the power of 4 plus 1. The 4 comes from this one right here, and then the 1 comes from this guy. If I don't have an exponent, but I do have a y, that's really, like I could write a little imaginary 1 right there. That's y to the first. Okay, so now all we have to do is simplify this. In the front, we have 4 times 2, and we know that 4 times 2 is 8. And then we have x to the power of, we're just going to add those two things. So 3 plus negative 2 gives me a 1. And then we have y to the 4 plus 1. 4 plus 1 is 5, so we have y to the fifth. And this is my final answer. Notice that we started with a negative exponent, but we ended up not having to deal with that negative exponent. I would try and simplify as much as you can before you deal with the negative exponents. And then if at the end you still have negative exponents, you can simplify those out or switch them to the bottom of the fraction or the top of the fraction. Okay, let's go through the second example. The second example is 3x to the fourth y to the negative 2, all to the power of negative 2. So this is a power rule one. When we do the power rule, we have to take everything that's inside the parentheses to that power. So I'm going to say 3 to the power of negative 2, x to the power of 4 times negative 2. Remember that power rule says that I'm going to multiply the exponents. So if I already have an exponent on something, I'm just going to multiply the exponent that it already had times the exponent that's on the outside of the parentheses. And then we have y to the negative 2 times negative 2 because both of those powers on the y are negative 2's. Okay, now we're going to simplify. 3 to the power of negative 2, I could plug that into a calculator, but it's going to give me 1/9. The reason why it gives me 1/9, I'm going to write it over here. 3 to the power of negative 2, we don't like negative exponents, and so I'm going to shove that to the bottom of the fraction. That would give me 1 over 3 to the power of positive 2, because when I switch it to the other side of the fraction, it becomes a positive. And we know 3 squared is 9, so I can change that to be 1 over 9. So that's how we got that 1 over 9. And then for our x, we're going to have x to the power of 4 times negative 2, which gives me negative 8. And then we have y to the power of negative 2 times negative 2. A negative times a negative is a positive, so we have y to the 4th. Okay, so this is a perfect example of you're almost done, but now you have this negative exponent. And when we have the negative exponent, what we're going to do is shove it either to the bottom or the top of the fraction. Right now, it's considered to be on the top of the fraction, so we're going to put it to the bottom, and when we put it on the bottom, it'll turn positive. So my final answer is 1 times y to the 4th, because that didn't change. We didn't have to move that. And then on the bottom, we have 9x to the positive 8. And this is our answer. And you don't even need this one right here. You could take that away, because 1 times anything is itself. You can take that away. You can keep it in. It doesn't really matter. Okay. Then we're going to look at the third example. The third example is 2x squared y to the 0 squared all over 2x cubed y cubed. Okay. So on this one, it's kind of like a power rule and a quotient rule together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to deal with the power rule first, just because that's on the top. We're going to simplify the top first, then we'll do the quotient rule. So when I do the power rule, I'm going to have 2 squared times x to the 2 times 2, because we multiply the exponents when it's a power rule, and then we have y to the power of 0 times 2. That's on top. We're going to just leave the bottom the same, so 2x cubed y to the 3rd. Okay, let's simplify that top. So 2 squared gives me 4, and then we'd have x to the 4th and y to the 0, because 2 times 2 is 4 and 0 times 2 is 0. And then we're going to just rewrite the bottom like this. And then the big thing here is this y to the 0. Anything to the 0 power is 1, or it cancels out, so I can just scratch that out right there. And then we're going to deal with the quotient rule. So the quotient rule tells me I'm going to do just 4 divided by 2 right here, because those are coefficients. They actually do divide. They're not exponents. And then for the x's, I'm going to have x to the 4th minus 3, because I'm going to subtract those exponents. And then we have y to the 3rd. In fact, I'm going to just kind of push that over there. And then y to the 3rd stays on bottom, because there's no y on top to subtract from. So when we simplify that, 4 divided by 2 gives me 2. And then we have x to the power of 4 minus 3, which is just x to the power of 1. And that's over y to the 3rd. And this is my final answer. Okay. Let's go through this last example, which is x cubed, y cubed over, oh, they've got a's and b's. I am going to switch that, so ignore what I just wrote. We're going to have x to the negative 4 times x to the 0, not b. Sorry, guys. Let me erase what I have. We'd have y to the negative 4. And all of that is squared. Okay, so here's the deal. This is, again, like a quotient rule and a power rule together. We're going to start with the quotient rule. In fact, it's a product rule, quotient rule, and power rule. So notice that on the bottom you have a product rule. So we're going to start with that one. And then we're going to simplify the quotient rule, mostly because it's all inside a big set of parentheses. And then once we simplify that, then we'll deal with the power rule. So on the top, we just have x cubed, y cubed still. That doesn't change. And then on the bottom, we're going to add the exponents. So I'd have x to the negative 4 plus 0, because those are my two exponents for x. And then y to the negative 4. And that's still all in those parentheses squared. Which, when I simplify that, I'm going to have x cubed, y cubed over x to the negative 4, y to the negative 4 squared. Now I'm going to deal with the quotient rule. So I'm going to subtract. I would end up with x cubed minus a negative 4, because I have to subtract what's on the bottom. And then it'd be y cubed minus, oh, sorry. Once again, I'm screwing up. Here we go. minus -4 again, and that's all squared. So 3 minus a -4 will actually give me 7 because those two negatives cancel out to become a positive. So it's x to the 7th, y to the 7th, and that's all squared. Now we're going to distribute that 2. So it's going to be x to the 7 times 2, y to the 7 times 2, which would give me my final answer of x to the 14th, y to the 14th. And there we have it. This should be a review, like I said. If not, watch this video several times and go through the cheat sheet again. Good luck.